One of your themes, your underlying theme seems to me to be a kind of a spiritual sobriety that is needed. And of course, we've been talking about this in so many words already. I remember a few years ago when I was going to daily mass, sometimes at St. Patrick's, and you would celebrate the evening mass there and during the week. And one day for a couple of weeks, I was really struggling with angry thoughts about Pope Francis. And I came up to you after mass. You may or may not remember this, but I asked you, how do I deal with this? And you said something, I don't remember if you used the term sobriety. You may have said kind of that you need to practice kind of a mental asceticism or something like some such phrase about what you think about and how you think about it. And sometimes you just need to be silent, and not be thinking about these things all the time and being led by these thoughts in a certain emotional direction. But there's this more general kind of underlying approach of spiritual sobriety. Can you speak a bit about what that means in these times, spiritual sobriety?
Well, I like that phrase, to be mental austerity, mental
That's the phrase
asceticism,
you said, austerity. Yeah.
mental austerity, because I think
Yeah.
it's a phrase I picked up from a missionary of charity many years ago,
Hmm.
and I think it is important to be, just as we can practice self-denial at the table, in food. There are many times, even in one day, where we have to have that capacity to turn away from certain thoughts that are not healthy, that provoke us in anger or, unnecessary frustration, where we could actually be saying a prayer, when we find ourselves challenged in thought. And that's necessary, it's necessarily in general, but it's necessary now in regard to the church, what we may perceive. I mean, if you're living in a parish, not every priest is going to make parishioners happy, and we have to go to the heart of matters. We have the Eucharist, we can have our prayer, tabernacle's still there, the reality of giving our life fully to God, and we have to live with hope and not expect answers necessarily or solutions coming from the outside, or like you said, political things are not going to necessarily solve things. But as John of the Cross said, and I use this as a epitaph in one of the chapters, the purest suffering also provides the greatest penetrating knowledge. And if we are pure in our desire for God and sacrificially offering, we'll see things in a more deeper light.
Hmm. I want to quote a sentence from the book which is relevant to this, and this has to do with the whole notion of thinking about the end times as well, or crisis that may happen in the future. You say, the ascetical refusal to grasp at interpretations of what cannot be known so clearly of what still awaits us is needed today. I really liked that sentence.
Yeah, because you do have sometimes people who are really a little too anxious for things to come to a head with this, and everything to break down and collapse. And we don't know. We are facing an incomprehension. If we're betting, we would say, well, things will go on for centuries to come. However, I think, and this is why I've written the book also, I think we do have to face the question now, what kind of century are we living in? And nothing is going to happen that quickly, but there's too many converging signs, including, the apparitions of Our Lady at Fatima, and, many things that say, let us be soberly aware that we may be entering a grave time, unprecedented in the history of the church. We may not live to see, the end result of it, but we need to be awake in this time, as Jesus said in the gospel.